Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Welcome in, podcast listeners, to another episode of Confessions of a Parent Coach. And today, actually, this week and next week, we are going to be talking about school stuff, all different kinds of school stuff. What we're going to talk about today is grades. And the reason why I'm focusing in on school stuff right now is because I am going to be leading a free workshop. You get 2 chances to attend. This is how I like to do my workshops. I like to do an opportunity on a Sunday evening and then an opportunity at noon the next day on Monday. So no excuses. You can totally find a time to attend. And that is exactly what I'm doing this time. So we are going to be doing a workshop called Beyond Grades. And it is either your pick, Sunday, October 8th at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, or you can come the next day during your lunch hour at noon on Monday the 9th. And once again, Mountain Time, right? So do the math wherever you are. If you're Eastern Time, you're 2 hours ahead. If you're Pacific Time, you're an hour behind. That's all I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to get into the weeds about timing, but school stuff, I like to also wait until like stuff is kind of settled and we're now in the thick of the school year, super early in the school year still, so we still have plenty of time to turn things around if we need to, but further enough into the school year that, well, first of all, we're settling into a routine, and second of all, the stuff that's actually worthy of our attention is now kind of sifting to the surface, because there's a lot of wacky stuff that happens in the first couple of weeks of school that kind of settles out by itself. So I think the beginning of October is the perfect time to actually do all this back to school stuff that other people love to do in August when we're all running around with like chickens with our heads cut off. So that is what we're going to be doing. The workshop is called Beyond Grades. And if you're interested in learning about it, the link is super easy to remember. It's a bit.ly link, bit.ly/parenting beyond grades. All lowercase, all one word, easy to remember, parenting beyond grades. So let's dive into this whole grades concept today. And of course, I'm going to start us off on this topic with a confession. So many listeners know that my eldest son, when he was a freshman in high school, was really struggling in all different arenas of his life. Mental health, he was abusing substances, he was really just not doing great. And he also was not doing great in school. And now this was the first time that my kid had gotten off the rails with school. He had always, he never, he wasn't like a straight A like GT kid necessarily, but he never had gotten poor grades, or any feedback I'd ever gotten from teachers was never about his academics. He just was really honestly an afterthought with school. Like I hardly ever even had to check in or make sure that things were going well, because they just always were. And then all of a sudden it was not just like, oh, now he's starting to get C's. It was like he was failing. Like I went to a parent teacher conference with him with his math teacher, and his math teacher literally was like, you have done not one homework assignment this entire school year. Like I was blown away. Like he wasn't even trying, and I'd never, since he was my oldest and since he had never struggled in school, like I literally was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Right. I just never had to deal with that as a parent. Now, of course, I'd helped clients do it, but as we all know, we teach what we need to learn, and also there's a big difference between teaching something and living it. And that was my experience with Elijah and grades. And it all kind of came to a head. So his first semester was ending, but he had some time, right? It was Thanksgiving break. So he had Thanksgiving break and like a few more weeks of school. And then before winter break, that was it. His classes were going to be over for the semester and he would get his grades. And so we had this like fall conference with his teacher, who was like, you really need to step it up. Not just his math teacher. I'm telling you, like every single class, he was completely failing. And so it was Thanksgiving. We're at my sister's house for Thanksgiving, and he has to write this book report on Paulo Coelho's book, The Alchemist, which, by the way, if you haven't read that book, you should. It'll take you like 3 days. It's a really great book. You could literally just read it in one sitting, maybe. Also, it's such a great allegory. It is such a great connection for people who are like starting their initiation process into things like spirituality or the universe or even things like the law of attraction. It is a really, really great entry point for that. So it's such a great entry point, sidebar, that I'm using it as the gift that I gave to all of my retreat participants that are coming to this October's retreat, because it is just really, really on theme and just such a lovely read. So sidebar over, but definitely get your hands on a copy of The Alchemist. But anyway, Elijah had to write a book report on this, and he had read the book because he loves reading, and he just could not put two thoughts together to write a book report about it. And, I later learned it was because he was intoxicated. But at the time, all I was thinking about was this kid has to get this done. We need to like kind of drag this kid across the finish line here for the semester. So the book report was just one of like 10 things I had written down at this parent teacher conference of like, okay, if he does these 10 things, he will, pass with maybe C's or something like that. And I'm sitting down at the kitchen table at my sister's house with him. He's got his computer, the book, and I'm reading the prompts. And I, I basically am like, okay, well, Elijah, the prompt says this. What do you want to say about that? And he'd be like, well, I don't know. And I was like, well, what did you think about the book? And he'd answer the question. And then pretty soon I just took the laptop and I put it in front of me because I could type faster than Elijah. So he was just like saying stuff to me, and I was like typing as fast as I could what he said. And then I would suggest him, um, maybe we should put this paragraph before that paragraph and blah, blah, blah. And in the middle of all of this, my sister leans over to me and she just is like, what are you doing? You were basically like writing his book report for him. And at first I was like, no, I'm not. And then a second later, I'm like, God, I totally am. I am completely writing this book report for my son. Like, I've never done anything like this. I don't even believe in doing stuff like this. Like, I would never act this way. Like, what am I doing? And I was trying to rescue him because, in my mind, him getting bad grades or failing a class was just, I didn't really even stop to think, like, why, who cares if he fails? Like, I didn't not, it was just failing was bad. Bad grades are bad. I can't let anything bad happen. So come on, let's write this book report. And I never even thought about, well, first of all, that I was rescuing my son. I didn't think about why it was so important to me that he didn't fail. I didn't think about why he was failing. I didn't think about any of that. All I thought about was, let's get you across the finish line. So I think you can see where I'm going with this. That was not a good decision. Okay. So this was an example of what not to do. Please do not rescue your children this way. It was a big mistake. And by the way, like I helped him. I did step back, but I still was definitely hovercrafting. He got an A on the paper. It made no difference. My son was really not doing well, and he continued to decline until we actually tuned into what was really important with him, which had nothing to do with school. So that's a story for another day. But, suffice it to say, like, all of my meddling, maybe it did get the result that I wanted, which was an A on this paper. Who cares? And that's kind of why this workshop that we're doing in October is called Beyond Grades, because grades are just so, I don't want to say that they're useless because you can get some useful information from them for sure. But the real detriment about grades is that they're a huge distraction for all of us. And I'm going to talk about why that is today. So, first of all, they are kind of misleading. So, what do I mean when I say that they're misleading? What I mean is, you could have great grades but be struggling terribly. And in fact, I have a client testimonial that I want to share with you guys about that experience. Also, you could have very poor grades, but be perfectly intelligent, knowledgeable even about things. Like, so for example, Elijah was paying attention in class. The reason why he was failing his classes is because he was doing absolutely nothing outside of the classroom. So if the teacher gave a test, he would probably get an A or a B on it, even though he hadn't done anything, because he was really, really smart and he was engaged when he was in class. He also was getting great grades for like participation and stuff like that. But he was failing the classes because he did nothing outside of the classroom. So his grades were actually not a reflection of like how well he knew the material. So that's what I mean when I say they're misleading. You could have great grades and not actually, that doesn't really encapsulate the whole picture of the student. Similarly, you could have poor grades, and that also doesn't encapsulate the entirety of this whole student, right? So my client shared this testimonial that I wanted to share with you. She said, I was naturally a straight A student who struggled with friendships. I was bullied relentlessly and told to kill myself because I was a nerd. Now, at 36, I'm finally diagnosed with ADHD, and I wish we had the resources back then that we have today. This is a great example. We are really putting our eyes on the wrong prize when we look at grades. Like this client was getting straight A's. Who cares? Who cares? People didn't even realize the struggle that she was experiencing, and they didn't understand why she was experiencing that. Now, as an adult, she's understanding that, but my goodness, what talk about putting your eyes on the wrong prize. Like, nobody wants their kid to be like suffering in silence while they just go get a 4.0. Like, who cares, right? So, grades are misleading because also there are lots of things that grades don't measure. For example, like with this client, stress, friendships, positive relationships, behavior in the classroom, even things like executive functioning, like how smoothly your kid can get ready and out the door. All of these things are so much more important than grades. And here's the other side about grades: grades are the last end of a chain reaction. They're kind of like the last domino in a domino effect. If your kid has the learning skills and they're not struggling socially and they're not struggling with executive function and then there's a really good chance that they'll have good grades. When you see the grade, it does not tell you what in that chain reaction needs our love and attention. So here are the things that I'd like to focus on instead. Okay. We like to focus on those metrics behind your grades. Okay. Let's really address what's beneath the school struggle and even investigate if there is a school struggle. Cause right, like this kiddo had 8 straight A's. Could be saying like, oh, she's not struggling at all. Well, of course that wasn't true. And let's help kids with what really matters. So instead of looking at grades, I want you to look at the whole kiddo. We're going to talk about in this workshop, and this is what I want you to look at now. Don't wait for the workshop. Things like social drama, frenemies, bullying, that kind of stuff. Look at the responsibility and executive functioning stuff. Like, is your child able to do their homework themselves at an age appropriate level? Is your child able to take responsibility and be independent about the things they need to do to be successful in school? How about what's happening in school in terms of behavior and respect and rules and stuff like that? And then also there's even this like time management piece. Like, when you think about it, school is this stage for our kids on which almost every facet of their growth and development play out. And we try to boil that down to one little letter, an A, a B, a whatever. It is so much bigger than that. And it doesn't matter about the grades. So my hope for you listening to this episode today, my hope for you in coming to the workshop is that you are going to leave with this feeling that you're really probably not going to pay attention to your kids' grades all that much at all. And I can tell you right now, this is like one of those like humble brag kind of things. Like, I don't even know what my kids' grades are most of the time. I don't, or I find out about them like way after the fact. That whole like sucked in like I was with Elijah when he was struggling is just totally turned around. And that's what we're going to be talking about. And in the Beyond Grades workshop is how do you turn that around? Not just proving to yourself that grades aren't important, but honing in on what is important and really trusting that your kid is going to land on their feet if they have all of those building blocks in place, regardless of what their GPA is, regardless of even if they graduate high school, which I know is a crazy thing to think, but it is true. So if you never come to one of my workshops before, I plan a ton of time for Q&A. So it's really best if you come live. I do always share the recording, so don't worry about it if you can't come live, but it's so much better when you do because it's lots of Q&A and you're really just engaged and plugged in a different way. Bring me all your school dilemmas and stuff because I will answer all your questions. And go ahead and get registered. Remember that registration link is bit.ly/parenting beyond grades. And of course, the link will be in the show notes as well. And I really hope and encourage you, if you're starting to get sucked into that vortex right now, it's not too late to turn things around. We're still in the very beginning of the school year. There is time for you to shift your perspective, get your head on straight a little bit better, and truly connect with your child around their school experience, the holistic life that they're living this whole day that they're spending away from you, unless your kid is homeschooled, and connect with them around that and let the grades fall away. I hope that's helpful. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye, everybody.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.